shipped off to internment camps. After the original story aired, several people reached out saying they recognize their family members. Our Ryan Yamamoto introduces us to two cousins from Chicago who traveled to Northern California with the hopes of learning more about their family history.
It's like traveling back in time, an adventure these two cousins, Peggy and Candace, decided to make together.
Piecing together bits and pieces of what we know.
Flying in from Chicago to the Bay Area to make the long drive.
Just park here?
To Marysville, California. The journey taking them here.
Look at the field of yellow flowers.
To the Arboga Assembly Center Memorial, where in 1942, thousands of Japanese Americans were rounded up before being sent to the internment camps.
This is my mother. This is my mother. And this is my grandfather. And this is my grandmother.
The pilgrimage into their past, sparked by a story we aired last year.
These handsome young men.
On the rediscovery of these long-lost photos. Taken by a Marysville photographer named Clyde Bush, who unknowingly documented a piece of American history more than 80 years ago.
This is our grandfather. Kazuma Hayashi. I saw the first video when my brother sent it to me.
He lives in San Francisco.
And he lives in the San Francisco area. He forwarded it to me, and then I looked at it and immediately spotted my mother.
Women.
Mom, there she is.
I spotted her, and then I spotted my grandmother.
Oh, there she is.
Grandma. And my brother was surprised because he had not spotted my grandmother.
So this is Grandma, and you notice she's all dressed up. She's got her suit on.
And for local historians Sue Senger-Moyers and David Reed,
Every time we look at these, I feel like it's the first time.
it is a chance to help Peggy and Candace put the pieces of their past puzzle together.
Our grandfather Hayashi, and there's a couple pictures, and then our grandmother.
There's two.
Grandmother, so husband and wife.
But also learn more about the faces in the photos that they keep.
That's my mother, and this is her good childhood friend, Himeko. Her mother was my mother's Japanese teacher.
Your mother's Japanese teacher. Well, I'm looking at a family's private history that needs to be shared because these were real people and this is what happened to them. And so that's the story we want to tell.
Oh, it's been incredible just spending some time with them today and learning the backstory
Right.
on some people that prior to today were just faces and a ocean of negatives.
This is our grandmother on our mother's side.
Nobuko Hayashi.
For Peggy and Candace, a chance to understand their own history and to pass it on.
If we don't pass it down, it's going to be lost. Right? If we don't make the record, at least keep the record straight, get this information out, it's lost. And that's hard to think about.
Where they will return to Chicago, knowing their story is well preserved.
It's really something that they're being recognized, that what happened to them, it means something now.
Finding meaning by taking a journey into the past to help future generations understand today.
If you'd like to see a slideshow of the photos of the families taken by Clyde Bush, you can head to the AAPI Month section of our website. That's at kpix.com.
As we talk about family, we are reminded of the word ohana, meaning family in Hawaiian. And after the devastating fires in Maui last August, the spirit of ohana came from the Bay Area. A group of San Francisco firefighters is keeping the spotlight on residents who are rebuilding and piecing their lives back together. These firefighters took the lead in offering help when all seemed lost.
Staying in shape is a part of Stanley's dedication to a profession he can't let go of.
I love the camaraderie.
It's that bona fide bond among firefighters that drew him in 29 years ago.
It was fun to be at work, right, but serious at the same time.
When the fast-moving inferno ripped through Lahaina, Maui last August, becoming the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century, Lee felt the calling, similar to the one he experienced when he was a young firefighter on 9/11.
I remember wanting to get to New York to help, but we never got the official ask. We sat around and waited and did nothing. That ate at me for years.
Lee rounded up 12 volunteers from the San Francisco Asian Firefighters Association. They landed on Maui, distributing supplies to residents who lost everything.
We worked hard to find how to get there, where to stay, and when we finally got everything lined up, we went.
The wildfires that ravaged Lahaina have become a familiar theme in many parts of Northern California over the years. Making seismic shifts to address these catastrophic events from Hawaii to the Golden State and beyond is the long-term challenge.
The main reason why we're getting these big wildfires that are destructive to the urban environment is because of the increasing link to global warming.
Dominic De La Sala is a climate scientist with Wild Heritage and has served on White House Council task forces on forests and wildfires.
The emissions that we put into the atmosphere, mostly from burning fossil fuels, but also from logging forests, from destroying wildlife habitat, is contributing to that dangerous feedback between big wildfires and emissions.
Fighting wildfires isn't where most of Lee's experience lies, but during their trip, he and his team of volunteers helped fight a grass fire on Maui. Lee has spearheaded 3 trips to the ravaged parts of the island since the fires erupted. While many have moved on, Lee has organized and continues to raise funds in the rebuilding effort.
Maui still needs a lot of help, right? Lahaina still is just being cleared now.
It's that persistence to finish the job that has defined Lee's career as a firefighter. In his last firefight, he suffered a second head injury. The late Mayor Ed Lee paid him a visit at the hospital.
To this day, I still wish I was out in the field so I could fight fires.
The San Francisco Asian Firefighters Association Lee oversees has grown over the years, now in the hundreds. His message to the next generation of firefighters is simple.
You trust your crew, right? And the crew that are responding to it.
For Stan Lee and other San Francisco firefighters, the work for Maui isn't done.
I hope to go a 4th or 5th time to keep bringing attention to the plight of the Lahaina residents who are displaced.
It's that dedication to offer help which strengthens bonds among firefighters and with communities even thousands of miles away.
Lee and the San Francisco Asian Firefighters Association are planning another trip this June to help residents in their rebuilding journey. Limited housing and hotels during the Lahaina wildfires prevented the fire departments like SFFD from providing mutual aid. Lee and his volunteers use their vacation days to assist with disaster relief on their own. He's now an acting lieutenant in San Francisco Fire's Division of Training.
Well, the city of San Pablo now has its first Asian American police chief. Brian Bubar is a 21-year veteran of the department. He was promoted as the interim police chief last year and was chosen for the permanent position out of more than a dozen applicants. Back in 2020, the group Stop AAPI Hate was formed in San Francisco to track incidents of hate and violence against their community. Now, 4 years later, they are launching a new project, and it's called Spread AAPI Love. They put together stories and videos from members of the AAPI community to celebrate strength, power, and cultural pride.
Filipino Americans are the second largest group among Asian Americans in the United States. Yet their stories often go untold. Our Ann Makovic met a North Bay author who put the raw emotion of a common immigration story into print.
May Respicio is a typical Filipino American girl raised in the Bay Area. But those who came before her didn't have it so easy. May is part of the first generation of her family to be born in the U.S.
When I was growing up, there were never any books that featured a Filipino or Filipino American protagonist, ever, not a single one. And things are changing a little bit, luckily, but we still need more of those books.
So she decided to write one. It started as a novel that included 12 poems because the signature character, Isabel, is 12 years old. And the story is written from the experience of generations before May, children whose mothers moved to America and worked until they could send for their families. She reads from her book a poem called No More Goodbyes.
The flight attendant leads me out, bodies and faces, my wobbly legs, my trembly heart, scanning for her.
The raw emotion of a preteen adjusting to a brand new world. Though May's life is a little simpler than that of her main characters, the process of finding yourself is universal.
When I was growing up as a kid, I think there were times when I felt caught between two worlds. So this story is very much about belonging and trying to figure out where you fit in. And for me, growing up as a kid in California, but within a very traditional Filipino household, there were those moments where I wasn't sure where I fit in or which world to belong to.
Part of her story takes place in San Francisco's Botanical Gardens, where she and her fictional characters spent time growing up. Her book uses many metaphors of plants.
This character learning to grow, and she's got this wonderful garden inside of her, and by the very end of the book, she learns to bloom. And she learns that you can bloom wherever you're planted.
And as May's book blossomed, she realized it needed to change too. She went from writing a book of prose with a little poetry to a book of all poems.
The poetry was such a powerful vehicle for such a tender story that I really wanted to go with that.
Including a poem called Home.
I walk with my grandfather through 1,000 shades of green, plants dressed in dew, flowers flooded in light, as birds fill the trees with their wild, loud songs.
Just one of many songs that May and others in the Filipino community are ready to sing.
And speaking of books, a world-renowned San Francisco bookstore has its roots in activism and calls for more diversity. Paul Yamazaki is the longtime buyer for City Lights. He's a third-generation Japanese American. In his college days, he marched against war and advocated for more diverse literary representation in academic institutions. His protesting cost him some time behind bars, but his passion for education that represents the whole of America made its mark.
We felt that, particularly for students of color, that we weren't being represented in the curriculum, by the faculty, and by the outreach into the various communities.
Paul is currently exploring new ways to monetize the business, including the possibility of turning it into a nonprofit.
Well, still ahead, bringing a taste of Asia to the Bay, the delicious way Chinatown is hoping to draw in visitors. Plus,
meet the very first Miss Chinatown. She's 99 years old. Her story coming up.
As we celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Month, we share some living history. We introduce you to the Bay Area woman who became the very first Miss Chinatown more than 3/4 of a century ago.
Sharon Shin on the San Francisco native and the new crown she recently received.
Penny Wong is royalty in Chinese American history. The 99-year-old San Mateo County woman was crowned queen at the very first Miss Chinatown beauty pageant in 1948. She admits she wasn't planning to enter the contest, the Chinese American version of the Miss America pageant.
One lady came up and asked me, why don't you join them? I said, oh, right. so I did.
She found herself breaking barriers. After all, it was a big deal to parade in a bathing suit when you're not swimming. But she's known for taking chances.
I was surprised that I won. Honest, I was surprised.
And suddenly, she got invited to a lot of parties.
I don't call myself a celebrity. I find myself just like anybody else. But I just had a little more fun, that's all.
And she paved the way for younger women like Cynthia Yee, Miss Chinatown San Francisco 1967, who's admired Penny's boldness and confidence.
She was the first one to be in a bathing suit to win a contest. Oh my gosh, you know, that was a no-no in 1948. She just made very important strides and steps for the Chinese American women.
Perfect, we got it. So that's a dig into your scalp. I love that. I love it.
Those women include Cynthia's group, the Grant Avenue Follies, the dancing senior citizens who called themselves Glammas from San Francisco's golden age. They honored Penny with a crystal crown to replace the now discarded paper one that came with her title.
It's been a long time and she deserves a crystal crown, don't you think?
After winning Miss Chinatown, Penny did office work and some modeling. The native San Franciscan married her late husband Andy and had 3 children. They owned a nightclub, the Sky Room, and other businesses in Chinatown where she lived most of her life.
She definitely is the role model for all Chinese American women. In her life, you know, having children, having a career, having a business, and encouraging everybody to get out and live.
I had a lot of fun. I'll tell you, I had a lot of fun, and to this day, I still have a lot of fun.
We go back in time to the good.
These days, Penny holds court with her younger friends, like the Grant Avenue Follies, whom she supported for years. With age, Penny's experienced some hearing and memory loss, but she still plays a mean game of poker, exercises, and loves to laugh. What is the secret to long life?
Drink a lot of water.
It's no secret that the first Miss Chinatown still reigns when it comes to living life to the fullest.
Penny has 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. The civil rights group Chinese American Citizens Alliance organized the first Miss Chinatown pageant. And by the way, Penny says the only makeup that she wore was lipstick. And recently, we spent time with Miss Chinatown USA 2024, Tara Wong Nash. She and other members of Bay Area AAPI pageants joined us for our AAPI month kickoff reception with community leaders.
Another effort to boost visits to San Francisco centers around food, music, and entertainment. It's modeled after the night markets in places like Taipei. The second Friday of every month, San Francisco's Chinatown transforms into its own version of the night market. So popular during the APEC summit last fall, they decided to make it a regular event. Vendors are hoping these markets will bring more people and much-needed business to the area still recovering after the pandemic.
Coming up, Reclaiming Heritage, how a San Jose group has been doing this for decades through drum beats. Drum culture was on full display at the 46th annual Nikkei Matsuri Festival in San Jose's Japantown. Thousands of people turned out for the event. And before the festival, our Len Ramirez went behind the scenes with San Jose Taiko to hear the meaning behind the music.
When Franco Imperial hits the ancient taiko drum,
I feel like there's a relationship happening in terms of connecting with the instrument.
It creates a certain sensation.
And that translates to what the audience hears and feels.
And whether it's a single drum in the studio or a group of them in the street, creating something people can hear and feel is what San Jose Taiko has been doing for the past 51 years.
We all have a heartbeat, and I think that pulse is something that we all tap into when we're doing any kind of drumming.
Franco joined the group 26 years ago and is the group's longtime artistic director.
When I am drumming, I feel pure joy, bliss.
And those are some of the feelings the founders of San Jose Taiko tapped into in 1973, when a new Japanese-American cultural pride emerged decades after World War II and the hardship of internment.
That generation, I think, really struggled and fought to reclaim that identity with pride and with honor.
Wisa Uemura began playing taiko as a Stanford student in 1993 and is now executive director.
And taiko, for at least our select group of founding members, really was a way for them to say, this is a Japanese art form, and it's not a quiet, passive art form that so many people associate with the Japanese culture. It is something very loud, very powerful, very much in your face as far as being, like, claiming their voice, claiming their heritage, and that really spoke to those individuals and continues to this day.
Although permanently a part of San Jose's Japantown, the group has evolved into one of the premier arts organizations in the city, attracting students and players from all backgrounds.
It's kata, musical technique, attitude, and key. If you can embrace those four principles, then it doesn't matter the color of your skin or your gender or anything about you. As long as you can embrace those principles, then you can be a part of this group.
The drumbeat goes on for San Jose Taiko, keeping culture and tradition alive while reaching out to new artists and new audiences every day.
We are lucky to have so many colorful AAPI celebrations across the Bay Area. In Fremont, families didn't let the rain dampen their holy celebration. It was known as the Festival of Colors, people spreading colorful powder to mark the arrival of spring. This was Oakland's Lunar New Year parade celebrating the Year of the Dragon. The parade returned last year after a 30-year hiatus. San Francisco also held a Lunar New Year parade, and San Francisco's Cherry Blossom Festival included live traditional dance and food in Japantown. Some folks even dressed up as their favorite Japanese anime characters.
Still ahead, Asian American women facing a serious, often deadly condition that seems to come out of nowhere.
And the best case scenario is that I live with this condition for the rest of my life.
The Bay Area research into AAPIs and lung cancer and how one woman is turning her pain into purpose.
Plus, sparking change in their communities, how Asian Americans are commanding attention from Bay Area politicians.
Welcome back to Roots and Resilience as we celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We are diving into an uncomfortable and scary subject, cancer, specifically lung cancer.
It is often undetected until a late stage, and a Bay Area-based study found that 80% of Asian American women with lung cancer never smoked. They were also 1.5 to 2 times more likely to be diagnosed than any other racial group. Our Elizabeth Cook talked to the researchers and patients working to figure out why.
Vicki Nee doesn't take walks like this for granted. Each step has a purpose, and she's rarely by herself. And if you happen to pass them, you might think these are just 2 friends catching up. But the women who join her all share a common bond. They all have stage 4 lung cancer.
Living with stage 4 cancer means that you have, a bomb strapped to your chest, and it could go off at any time.
It all started 5 years ago when she got a call from her doctor.
But I remember vividly that he called me while we were out having dinner and left a voicemail.
Before she knew it, Vicki was sitting in an oncologist's office.
The word cancer comes out of the doctor's mouth, so that's kind of not good.
Vicki never smoked a day in her life, but yet this 48-year-old mother of 2 has stage 4 lung cancer.
I was asking them, I'm like, okay, so how long is treatment, and when are we done with this? And no one had told me up until then that it was stage 4, so it was incurable. And so, I would basically have to live with this condition for the rest of my life. And the best case scenario is that I live with this condition for the rest of my life.
Vicki is now 53, and the treatments have been brutal. They've given her high blood pressure and high cholesterol. The cancer has now spread to her abdomen. But it's not the physical side effects that hurt the most. Vicki has 2 daughters who were 13 and 15 when she was first diagnosed.
They know that I have cancer. And we don't talk about sort of staging. We don't talk about cures or anything like that. They just know that I've had cancer for, 5 years now.
A few years ago, Vicki was asked to participate in a research program at UCSF called FANS. FANS, standing for Female Asian Never Smokers, launched 15 years ago by Dr. Scarlett Gomez and Dr. Iona Chang, a first-of-its-kind study in the U.S. on why lung cancer rates were rising among Asian females who never smoked.
Lung cancer rates actually have been declining over the past several decades. But what was sort of emerged as an unusual observation is that the exception to that trend was among Asian American females.
The doctors hope the FAN study leads to the development of more preventative measures and screening, but also grab the attention of the folks with the deep pockets. Right now, less than 1% of funding from the National Institute of Health goes to diseases that impact the Asian American community.
There is this perception that Asians don't get sick. We have very low rates of disease, and so NIH, to the extent that their primary focus is to fund health research, relies on those statistics.
It's just made us very strong advocates to really give a voice, to be able to speak out about the need to look at specific Asian ethnicity populations, to give them representation, to provide the data.
Vicki isn't spending her energy wondering why or how she got lung cancer.
Well, when you get diagnosed with cancer, I think you learn to control the things that you can and let go of the things you can't. And I have not tried to probe why I got cancer. I don't think it's like a healthy exercise.
Instead, she's turning her pain into purpose by reaching out to other women like 34-year-old Kit Ho, who she recruited to also be part of the FAN study.
If my tissue, if my saliva can help the researchers to find more medicine or find more ways to identify people early, then I want to be part of it.
Kit was diagnosed on Thanksgiving of last year. Doctors discovered 4 tumors in her brain that they believe were linked to lung cancer. Just like Vicki, she never smoked. She's also a mom.
I was just thinking, why did I get it? So, yeah, and the most thing I was thinking when I was diagnosed was my 2 little kids, because they are 2 and 4. And lung cancer, being a nurse, I know it's not a good outcome.
Kit will often join Vicky on her walks. They are allies in the same fight.
It's like a safety blanket for me to know other people are in the area.
If cancer has taught her anything, it's that life can change in an instant. Vicky is focusing on the things that bring her joy, family, friends, and helping others know that even in their hardest moments, they won't have to walk this path alone.
I want to do everything I can to make this diagnosis sort of meaningful for the world.
The FANS study looks at patients' genetics and family history, as well as environmental and lifestyle exposures. They're still looking for participants, especially older Asian women who do not have lung cancer, to join the study. For more information, you could go to our website, kpix.com. Meanwhile, breast cancer rates are declining in white, non-Hispanic American women, but they are increasing in Vietnamese American women, who are also far behind the national average when it comes to breast cancer screening. We met a San Jose gardener turned abstract artist who is sharing his talents to help fight breast cancer. Tru Hai Do fled Vietnam in 1987. In the U.S., he took up landscaping, but he never gave up his art. Now some of his paintings sell for thousands of dollars, which he often gives back to the community. A recent show and fundraiser was inspired by breast cancer survivor Kathy Ton Nhu. The two share the same hometown in Vietnam, and they found each other by chance in San Jose and became friends.
When I find out just 6 months, I find out the breast cancer. And after that, we have a 1 year for treatment.
And when the people cancer feel better, feel less hurt, and at the same time, I think I feel it's very good too.
Dow has also held shows that benefited Ukraine, Florida hurricane victims, and Maui fire survivors.
Asian Americans make up more than 30% of the population in San Francisco. Despite that, the group was never considered a very powerful part of the political landscape. But that all changed in 2022 when the Asian American voting bloc decided to flex its muscle at the ballot. Ryan Yamamoto looks at the 2 issues that sparked this awakening and how politicians have taken notice.
When Lily Ho walks through San Francisco's Chinatown, she sees power in numbers.
The API community is 38% of the population of San Francisco. So if it's not important, it would be a really big problem.
And when hate became part of the problem for the AAPI community, it was Lily and other community members who became part of the solution. Especially during the rise of attacks on elderly Asian seniors.
It was anger, it was frustration, hopelessness, it was shock. Like, how can this even happen?
At the time, the community felt their concerns were being ignored by then District Attorney Chesa Boudin.
Nobody's representing the victims.
They believe was not doing enough to protect them.
It was outrageous that we were seeing it and then allowing it to happen.
And in 2022, the power of the Asian vote led the charge to recall the former DA. And that was just the beginning, because during the same year, that same voting bloc of Asian Americans, frustrated with the direction of San Francisco's education system,
actually insulted the entire Chinese community,
sent a clear message by recalling 3 members of the school board.
Education and public safety were 2 things that the API community rallied behind. What happened was we succeeded in winning historical recalls against 4 elected officials.
Han Lee covers both the AAPI community and now politics for the SF Standard. He says the school board and district attorney recalls changed the political landscape, forcing City Hall to take notice.
This community has become increasingly outspoken and also influential politically.
Candidates from Mayor London Breed to those looking to win her seat at City Hall You can easily spot them at Asian American functions courting the Asian American vote. And behind the scenes, their campaign teams have become more diverse.
Very intentional that they will look for Chinese-speaking staffers who are familiar with the community to do the community outreach.
Other candidates are taking it even one step further.
大家好，我係利德依家競選第3區 C3C。
For example, like Danny Sauter, who's running for District 3 Supervisor, which includes Chinatown, right? He's learning Cantonese for years, and now in some of the campaign events or political debate, he's showing off his Cantonese speaking skill.
As for Lily, helping to organize the AAPI vote may be an awakening of her own. This past March, she recently won an elected position on the Democratic County Central Committee.
There are still a lot of voters in the API community that aren't engaged, that aren't voting, that aren't registered to vote.
Inspired to step into the political arena with more work to do to highlight the power of the Asian American vote.
The community recognized that elections are extremely important to those things that they cared about.
But also to amplify the power of representation.
The Chinese community represents 180,000 of the nearly 300,000 in the AAPI community, and the strength in those numbers was evident earlier this year. In February, Mayor London Breed proposed putting a homeless center in Chinatown near the North Beach border. She received quick backlash from the Chinese community, and considering it was before the Lunar New Year and an election year, she backed down.
Coming up, she's a boss off the field. Meet a Bay Area CEO breaking barriers for women of color in sports leadership.
If not me, then who? If not me that helps change the behavior and what people think, then who?
And they're the sounds that remind people of home, how music is providing comfort and culture in the South Bay. A point of Bay Area pride belongs to our AAPI community. The president and CEO of the Bay Area Host Committee has a dream to bring Major League sports, even the Olympic Games, to the Bay Area. Meet Zaylene John Muhammad. She leads the change in bringing sports to the Bay Area. And that includes the 2025 NBA All-Star Game, Super Bowl 60, and select games from the 2026 World Cup, all over the next 2 years. And not only is she helping the Bay Area dominate in the world of sports, she is representing her family's Indian heritage and changing the landscape of leadership in the business of sports in the Bay.
You know, many more people of color, I wouldn't say women of color yet. There's some, not as many as I'd like to see, but people of color, many, many more. And I'd like to think that I had something to do with that, 20 or 30 years ago when I made the decision to say, this is what I'm going to do.
Along the way, John Muhammad says she wants to work to make a way for more women of color to find their ways into leadership in sports. And just in time for AAPI Heritage Month, champion figure skater and East Bay native Christy Yamaguchi now has her very own Barbie doll. The doll is a nod to Yamaguchi being the first Asian American woman to win the gold medal in Olympic figure skating.
Music can transport us to a past time or place. And this summer, a new exhibit in the South Bay is using sound to celebrate South Asian cultures. Our Len Ramirez looks at how it goes beyond the stereotypes.
For Dr. Malar Bhattacharya, this traditional Indian instrument called the sarod makes sounds that are soothing and sentimental.
This music really reminds people of home, especially if they've immigrated to this country. But if they've grown up here, they may have heard it growing up at home.
Dr. Bhattacharya is a second-generation Indian American, a physician at UCSF and one of the Bay Area's top sarod players. He's drawn to the music for creativity and relaxation.
You don't have to necessarily be Indian to appreciate that it has a certain touching quality, a kind of, some people would say, meditative or sometimes mesmerizing quality that really puts you in a zone. A good zone of peaceful thoughts and feelings.
It's been played for centuries, but soon it might be discovered by new audiences in the first-of-its-kind cultural exhibit at the King Library in San Jose called South Asians in Silicon Valley.
Like almost 20% of Santa Clara County is South Asian.
Mantra Roy is the lead curator of the exhibit, which focuses on the people, the music, the food, and many contributions of the South Asian community.
And by South Asia, I mean 7 countries. So that's Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. So that all these countries' diasporas live in this area, and they have been contributing to several sectors. You know, tech sector is very well known, of course.
Roy came to the U.S. as a young graduate student from Calcutta, earned her Ph.D. and taught at the university level before joining the King Library. She designed the exhibit to promote understanding and chip away at long-standing biases.
There's a stereotype of the techie in Silicon Valley, the South Asian techie who does really well. But then there are those blue-collar job areas, you know, for example, gas stations, you know, it's like taxi services, right, grocery stores. So our attempt at this library will be to capture all these various aspects of the South Asian experience.
The exhibit covers the hate crimes that targeted Sikhs, the community's rising political presence, as well as popular pastimes like cricket.
People are aware of the presence of the community, but not really engaging with these communities at a level at which they could get to know these communities. And I think the more we know of each other, the less biases will persist.
And in August, the exhibit will feature the sounds of South Asia, a half-day of musical performances which Dr. Bhattacharya is organizing. He wants to keep this musical tradition alive, and for him, that even starts at home. His 17-year-old son, Ishan, often accompanies him on the violin and plans to soon take up the sarod.
I think that keeping this integral part of our family and ethnic history is something really important. You know, this music was played by my ancestors.
Played by his ancestors and perhaps someday by his descendants, all part of sharing the culture of South Asia and keeping traditions alive.
Still ahead, shedding light on some history you probably didn't learn about in school. How artists are bringing a Filipino American figure to the stage. A little-known part of American history just came to the stage in the Bay Area.
It's highlighting the role of Filipino Americans in California's farm worker labor movement. Larry the Musical debuted at the Brava Theater in San Francisco's Mission District. It tells the story of Larry It Leong, who organized Filipino farm workers starting with the 1965 Delano grape strike and joining forces with Cesar Chavez, co-founding the United Farm Workers. As for this production, it started as a children's book 5 years ago.
I think that this is a story for anybody who's an American, just like the Boston Tea Party. We learn about it is absolutely essential to America's identity. This story, Filipino Americans in labor history, should also be central to who the United States is and what American schools teach.
It's very rare because not many shows are done with Filipino actors.
Feels like we're very much doing this with our ancestors, with our community, with our people.
While the AAPI community is traditionally known for being more quiet and reserved, there are some personalities that are undeniably larger than life.
That's right. One of those figures is affectionately known as Polka Dot. She is 90 years young, and she's a fashion icon in San Francisco's Chinatown.
I guess I'm a social animal. As they say, community helped me be who and what I am.
Earlier this year, people traveled from near and far to celebrate Dorothy Polka Dot Kwok. She was born and raised in Chinatown, moved to Livermore, and had a family. In her 60s, she got divorced and moved back to the city. She spent years giving walking tours around Chinatown, and in 2014, filmmaker James Q. Chan brought her on to research a movie that he was working on about the historic neighborhood.
She is a community treasure, a human unicorn, and we absolutely love her.
Dorothy launched into the world of San Francisco's art and fashion scene. She was photographed for a book showcasing stylish seniors in the city, and in 2022 became a model for designer Victor Tung. Well, still ahead, a sweet tradition and legacy decades in the making.
The Japanese American bakery that makes the famous coffee crunch cake turns 50 this year. The man who started it, the grandson who's continuing the tradition.
Looks boarded up and abandoned, but there is a delicious mystery behind this gate. That is, if you know when to be there or happen to be lucky.
The Golden Gate Bakery on Grant Avenue in San Francisco is best known for its egg custard tarts. The challenge is they don't have a set schedule. So when there's a buzz they're about to open, people line up sometimes for hours. A longtime Facebook page gives updates on when they are open. An employee tells us they board up to prevent break-ins. A Japanese American bakery in San Francisco and its famous coffee crunch cake turns 50 years old this year.
Sharon Chin on the man who started it all, the grandson who's continuing his legacy, and the history they're keeping in Japantown.
While his grandson crunches up a tray of candy coating, Moses Yasukochi still can't help but sneak a piece of the signature dessert he himself had baked for decades.
Somehow or other, I lasted 50 years.
Well, we got the new refrigerator, huh, Kenji?
The San Francisco native opened Yasukochi's Sweet Stop in December 1974.
That was your dream.
Yeah, and I'm happy.
The 87-year-old recalls how he could not refuse when friends offered him a space for a bakery inside a grocery store.
When I was a lot younger, I've always said I want to open a bakery in Japantown.
Why?
Why? Because there was no bakery in Japantown.
Moses made a name for himself, perfecting his own twist on the classic coffee crunch cake made famous by the old Blum's Bakery on Union Square. A glowing newspaper review changed everything for the young business owner.
I really took off, and ever since then, my business has gone up.
The publicity stirred up demand for the coffee crunch cake from locals and visitors from across the country. Moses' wife, Hatsie, helped decorate the cakes, and her smile became the face of the bakery. Their 3 daughters and grandkids also helped out. Then in 2020, Hatsie passed away after exposure to COVID.
She was really good with the customers. Me, I was the grumpy guy in the back making
6 and 7, Debbie.
Today, Moses is retired because of health issues, and he's turned the shop over to his grandson, Kenji Yik, a graduate of the French Culinary Institute.
Grandpa didn't have any of his kids want to do it, so we skipped a generation.
The city's named the bakery a legacy business. And Kenji says keeping it open isn't just good for the family, it's also good for Japantown.
We've been losing a lot of the really old businesses around here, and it's nice to know that one of them is going to be sticking around.
So far, Kenji's following his own recipe for success. The Sweet Stop is a semi-finalist for a 2023 James Beard Award, the culinary equivalent of the Oscars. Despite its sustained popularity, Kenji admits he cannot bake his family's famous cake and eat it too.
It's 15 years of having it at every single birthday, and you get tired of it eventually. So I don't think I've actually had it beyond just taste testing to make sure that it's right.
For him, the icing on the cake is making people happy.
So that's one of the things that I enjoy the most about it is you give them the cake and they're like, oh, I'm so excited. It's a big birthday party. We're so excited. Oh, my grandma ate this when she was growing up. And then you supplement.
And so, with his grandfather on the sidelines, Kenji keeps the family tradition alive, celebrating 5 decades of growing a sweet spot for Yasukochi's Sweet Stop.
Moses says the secrets to the longevity of his bakery are hard work and do not compromise on quality ingredients.
We want to thank you for joining us in our celebration of roots and resilience here on CBS News Bay Area.
And we are proud to highlight stories from our Asian American and Pacific Islander communities throughout the region. They are stories that define us.
If you want to share or watch any of our stories again, you could check out our website, kpix.com.
Right now on CBS News Bay Area, a graduation celebration interrupted by gunfire. We're hearing from Bay Area students